What's up? It's Mark coming at you today. I'm going to move myself up here so I can see. I'm going to show you what the sample looks like, the sample reports I get back from the GI map test. So you can see up top, GI map, DNA stool analysis. So these are the stool sample that I use most commonly. There is another stool sample company that I use as well from Genova. But again, there's two different reasons why I use these two different stool samples. So this is the one that I look for predominantly when I'm thinking that there's pathogens or something that's at play with someone's symptoms. I just want to run through the test briefly with you, kind of describe what it does show and some of the things that we might be able to see that helps understand what your gut infections might be doing. So the first thing we look for in this case is going to be pathogens, so pathogenic bacteria. So you can see this sample. Again, I have no idea what the sample is. This is the sample reports on the GI map website. So basically, we'll look through these couple of different pathogens here. So again, Campylobacter, very, very common for those of you that travel and drink contaminated water. It can definitely ruin your trip. C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, obviously one of the bigger toxins in the gut there that can cause loose and watery stool. Enterohepatic E. coli, again, obviously not good either. Shigella-like toxin, that's another common pathogen in the gut that we see frequently as well. Salmonella, Vibrino, and then Yersinia. So Yersinia is also another one that can just wreak, terror inside people's guts. So at the end of the day, nice list of pathogens there to see what's going on. Typically speaking, I don't see these terribly frequently with what I see. I have seen a couple of different ones, people that come back from traveling with issues with their guts, but I don't see these terribly commonly. When I do, it's not that it's alarming, but sometimes these are the things that we certainly want to make sure we're doing a really good job at kind of getting rid of, because they can lead to some potential, problems down from a long-term basis, right? Parasitic pathogens, Cryptosporidium, Entamoeba histolytica, and then Giardia. So Giardia, again, from still lakes and contaminated lakes with Giardia bacteria, pathogenic parasitic organism. Entamoeba, same idea, from still water, also can be translated through soils and that kind of stuff as well. And then Cryptosporidium, not good living inside your system either. Adenovirus and norovirus are the viral pathogens that they look for. So again, I don't see those terribly frequently either as well. This one I see a ton of, H. pylori, so Helicobacter pylori, bacteria that affects stomach and the stomach acid production. Then you see over here this virulence factor. So basically this kind of tells us the types and the signature of the H. pylori that we've kind of discovered inside your gut. And also these things down here, these kind of tell us, what it's doing. So some of them can kind of create basically a camouflage for the immune system. Some of it can kind of show us that there's a pump that's been activated to kind of remove those medications that are trying to kind of hit the H. pylori for a long period of time. There's some really interesting things you can learn about H. pylori in the stool sample. Look at normal bacterial flora. So basically these guys would be considered like friendly bacteria. So basically these are supposed to be found in your guts at certain concentrations. And the highs mean there's a little bit too much of them, and the lows mean there's too little of them, basically, right? So you can see here, this sample, Clostridium, a little bit high. Person might have some mood dysregulatory issues as well, some dopamine, like the drive and motivation, based on that's coming back high. Lactobacillus, our most friendly thing that we find in probiotic species. You can see it's low. And then Escherichia. So again, that's supposed to be something that kind of helps us create in response to gut infections as well. You see this is kind of low as well. So you can see she has I don't know if it's a he or she, but she has an infection, and we're kind of going to see that the things that protect her from that infection are kind of gone down. Then the ratios between Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. This isn't, to me personally, the more that I learn about this, the more that I realize that we don't know. So Firmicutes is a massive family. Bacteroidetes is a massive family. I don't put much weight on these, looking at the numbers of colonies yet. The reason why I think that the research is still in its infancy stages, and it's not really anything that we can say clinically that are going to substantiate a finding. So at the end of the day, this low here might kind of come back to some of these families that are low. But again, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of different types of bacteria. So personally, I don't put much into this phylum microbial yet. I might very well in the future, but at the end of the day, the research is still kind of piling in hand over fist, and I'm still trying to decipher what it means for you. So at the end of the day, we can look up, we can understand what this does. These things have been found forever inside people's guts, but this stuff is still fairly new on the horizon. So again, at the end of the day, it's not that it's not relevant, but again, like, does it turn the needles and create action steps that you're looking for? maybe not. So I don't put much into the phyla yet. Okay. Then we look at opportunistic bacteria. Again, opportunistic bacteria are supposed to be found inside of your guts at lowered concentrations. You can see the normal sample size over here. And then you can see over here, at the end of the day, there's highs and lows based on what's going on inside these samples. So you can see here, the person has no Morganella, so below detected limit. That's not always a bad thing. Pseudomonas is a little bit high. This person definitely has a lot of like chronic gut infections. It might be presenting with chronic gas, fatigue, diarrhea. She might be flip-flopping back and forth to constipation as well, depending on what her digestive markers are doing down below. But it's interesting to look at this person has a lot of chronic gut infections. First initial thoughts on a test like this, I would look for stomach acid. So these things should be being burned off by the fact that her stomach acid should be breaking those down. And in this case, it doesn't look like that might be happening. But again, we'll see in a few minutes what the results are from the digestive functions. Autoimmune triggers, these are big for people that have like the family history of autoimmune issues. I mean, Klebsiella comes from your teeth. So basically getting the same oral bacterial from parents and the same kind of oral hygiene routines is important to kind of make sure that that's being that's being tackled effectively, because Klebsiella can have its links to a couple of different types of autoimmune triggers. Citrobacter is another big one as well. And the other one that I find most frequent with people that can relate to rheumatic issues, rheumatoid arthritis, and that kind of stuff is Prevotella. So this guy here can have its hands in a couple of different bacteria as well. This one, Prevotella, also with Crohn's. So a couple of big triggers here we want to kind of get rid of. Fungi and yeast. So basically, unfortunately, this test is not the best at identifying yeast and candida. So at the end of the day, there's a better test for the urine test. But at the end of the day, it will certainly show if there's some things that are present there. But again, I don't use this as the gold standard for the test as far as it goes with what's going on inside for yeast. I think the organic acids is really good at that. And sometimes still a culture is good to look at what's going on inside the yeast cultures there. So again, good indicator something's going on there. This person doesn't have any yeast that's going on inside her system. But again, this test for yeast is not the gold standard. Cytomegalovirus virus and Epstein-Barr, so herpes virus and then Epstein-Barr, which is mono. So again, two big viral pathogens that can cause trauma inside the gut as well. Parasites, everybody hates the parasite section. Protozoa, so basically the little tiny microscopic things like Blastocystis hominis. These guys are pathogens that aren't supposed to be inside of our guts. Worms, everybody loves the worm section. Tinea is the most common one. These are the things like roundworms and ringworm infections that we see that with a lot of different people. Then we get to the digestive function. So at the end of the day, you see here I keep saying she. I'm going to use she from now on. But, digestive function, elastase 1 is basically how you digest proteins. You'll see she's at 388, which the reference value here says is fine. Personally, I like to see that around 500. So when I mentioned before first that she had this kind of potential of the digesting of protein, your stomach acid does that. So you see here, it's not where I would call optimal or functional. So again, there would be some work to do with definitely what's going on with her digestive function there. Stearicrit, digesting fats. Again, she's at 6. Again, less than 15 is perfectly acceptable. So again, probably no issues with that. Beta-glucuronidase, this is an enzyme that's upregulated inside your gut that actually helps you detox, like you're recirculating pathogens. So basically what I call beta-glucuronidase is like you ordering something off of Amazon and the box coming opened. So someone's coming to your house. Someone took the time to package up your box, send you exactly what you need. And in this case, your liver's packaging up the things that you don't need, moving it to your intestine to be pooped out. And then someone comes by and opens up that freaking box. So this is what's happening with some people. So you can see her, she's just slightly over on that response. But again, beta-glucuronidase gets upregulated when we see chronic leaky gut type scenarios. And if you need some more evidence on leaky gut, look at all the reds. So this is going to show that there's this kind of like issue going on inside the gut there that kind of might need to be resolved before this will shut down. This is the time too that people have to be careful with their hormone metabolites. So circulating of estrogen, should you have any weaknesses in your genetic history there for estrogen sensitive issues, you really want to be careful of beta-glucuronidase. And this, when I see this usually elevated, this is an immediate referral back to your GP to make sure this is being tracked on a 3-month basis. So again, sometimes there's some things that are a little bit above my pay grade. We want to make sure that someone in the medical profession certainly knows and understands that we found these things and how to track you and monitor you effectively. Fecal occult blood, again, are you bleeding somewhere inside the gut? You see this crazy upregulated, there very well might be a history there, or you might have something that's more on the irritable bowel disorder or disease category. I rarely see that. Every now and again I do, but again, these two things right here are usually an immediate referral back to the GP. Secretory IgA, layer of mucus that protects you basically from pathogen and infection. So basically you see this level is perfectly normalized here, which I'm surprised by. This probably hasn't been going on for very long in this case. Usually when you see this many infections with this kind of, this number here, if it's a chronic infection, something that's happening immediately, like you came back from Cuba or Dominican and you got sick, this number is up in like the 10,000s because it's an immediate infection. If that's been something brewing for years and years and years, and someone's chronically stressed, usually this number's way below 500. So I would say this is probably, I don't know, but in this case, this sample's probably getting to someone that's been sick for maybe like a month or two, not someone that's been sick their whole life. Anti-gliadin IgA is an immune response that your body makes to gliadin protein found in wheat. So basically, like the jaws of life, they pry open those types of cells inside the intestine. So you can see this person's pretty good on that. Calprotectin is an inflammatory marker. Basically, calprotectin is a marker that we measure when your white blood cells are being infiltrated inside of your gut, and then they break down. That's what calprotectin basically is. So this person is not terribly inflamed by any of this either. So that's obviously a really good sign. And then they added on to this test a zonulin marker. So zonulin is basically, again, like the jaws of life, to kind of prise open that tight junction inside the gut there to kind of leave the gut more permeable. Again, the culprit for this usually is gluten. Gluten-rich foods and gluten that's added to different foods. So again, you see this person coming back high. So the potential that this person would be, I don't know if they're celiac or not, I have no idea, but the following of a gluten-free type diet would certainly be a friendly thing to do in this kind of case there for this individual. So that's the GI map test. This is antibiotic resistant genes that basically are you resistant to any types of different bacterias, and you see the different types of medication classes there. And then antibiotic resistant genes for H. pylori. Basically, it just shows which antibiotics would work to kill off that H. pylori infection that we found there. So at the end of the day, it's a great test. To kind of, again, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't use any of this information because I'm not allowed to. But again, presenting this back to the doctor is something, if it's something that we needed to do, is certainly very, very helpful for selecting the right types of drug therapies should they be going to do that route. So that's the GI map test. It's very, very fascinating to kind of see and learn the intricacies of this test and how it relates to symptoms. Not every single high is something that we need to kind of act on right away. Like this person, for example, with high C. difficile might not have any chronic diarrhea symptoms, and we have to kind of factor in the history there. Sometimes just because the bacteria is present doesn't mean it's necessarily causing a problem. It again, sometimes can just be there. This has a things can be upregulated because other things are knocking them out, right? So at the end of the day, this person might not have chronic diarrhea, and you might not do anything about this person having this high C. diff there. But again, the time that the person would get antibiotics or a high dose of steroids or anything the case may be, these are the opportunistic times that these things can kind of present with their symptoms. So again, we want to be still doing something, maybe not immediately for this, but certainly factoring into the protocol as we go through to make sure that this goes back to normal. And on a retest, we would obviously want to make sure that that normalized. So at the end of the day, that's the GI map test. It's fascinating. It's kind of the sister video to what I just talked to you about with chronic gut infections and how it impairs fatigue and pain. So again, I know a lot of details here. Some of the stuff you just don't need to know. But, so many people ask me all the time, what does a GI map test look for? And again, this is what it does. So how we decide to kind of frame your lifestyle, how we frame your foods, how we frame your antimicrobial therapies, all those different types of things, or we use the GI map to certainly do that. So again, GI map not necessarily used for diagnostic purposes. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not trying to diagnose anybody. I'm just trying to understand what's behind the scenes of people's chronic health concerns. And again, this is one of the tools of the toolbox that I use. So if you're interested in a GI map test or, heard about it before or read about it and want to know more information, again, you can certainly reach out to me. Anyway, hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you have a fantastic day, and I'll be in touch with you soon.